The parsha starts out Bechukotai, if you will walk in my ordinances. Okay, now, it's interesting in our society, this is just like me, I'm not 100 years old, but let's say you go back, like 80, 90 years ago, things that are going on in society now, would be like, they wouldn't understand how people could live and socialize and interact. For example, like, I think 80 years ago, if a woman went to the beach with a bikini, they would put her in jail and throw away the key, right? And adultery and all these other things, these things didn't happen, And also, like, on television, things that people see, like, in daytime television today, like, that would be, prohibited, in television, let's say, even 40 years ago. Yeah. So the standards in our world are always fluctuating, in the secular world. In the Jewish world, it always stays the same. So I want to share an idea with you that I heard years ago, and if you ponder it, you can get a great insight of life, that if a person doesn't follow the chukim, the things that outwardly don't have a reason, eventually, even the mishpatim, even the things that are reasonable, he won't follow either. And I noticed this in society, that things that, like were reasonable, 40, 50, 60 years ago. So today they're looked upon as like chukim. Like, they don't make any sense. Why do this?
But something's real like that.
Huh?
Something's real like that. Like, like segregation wasn't even that long ago.
Oh,
like
okay,
that,
okay. Look, segregation. Yeah, okay. I'm not saying everything that's going on in American society. In Jewish society, there is no concept of segregation.
Right.
Of color, especially. Because you see, there are Jews from all over the world, and some of my best friends, married women who are very dark. They're Yemenite Jews, and he came from a European. It's very healthy, actually. I would suggest that it's good for the blood.
Helps your skin tone, too. Good skin tone.
Like, within the Ashkenazi community, you have this problem of Tay-Sachs sometimes.
Right.
And if you marry a woman, from, the Sephardic world, when I got married, my wife is from an Iranian family, and we didn't even have a test. They just said you didn't have to bother checking because your family, like, if you'd imagine this, like the Jews after the destruction of the temple, Iran and Iraq are basically Babylonia.
Right.
So even at the time of Solomon, even before the destruction of the temple, there were Jews living there. So my family and her family have been separated for over 2,000 years. So anyway, that aside. So the Torah is telling us, God is telling us, if you will walk in my ordinances and my mitzvot, my commandments you will guard, and you will do them. See, there's another thing of knowing the mitzvahs and then doing them. So then we're going to see the Torah expounds upon the idea of blessings that we're going to get, and you're going to have the rain in the proper time. Now, there's a very, very unique Rashi. I'm going to read it. If you want to follow, it's right over here. It looks scary a little bit, but Rashi, basically, there are like 5 letters different in that mode of writing. And this is a very famous Rashi that people expound upon. If you walk in my ordinances. So Rashi, again, when I speak about Rashi, he lived in the 1000s, and he wrote a commentary on all of the Gemorahs, all of the Bible, and in his spare time he was a rabbi of a community that was on the roots of the Crusaders. So he didn't have an easy life, But he was a genius in being able to write this, and when he published his commentary, it was accepted immediately. But it's not necessarily his ideas. It's all based upon the Talmud or the Medrash or, other sources. So what he did is he gave us a short commentary to keep us in place when we're trying to figure out what the Torah is telling you. So again, going back to Rashi, if you will walk in my ordinances. Now this is like a Gemara. Yochol zekima mitzvahs. You might think that this is talking about keeping, the 613 mitzvahs, and that's what we're talking about, keeping the 613 mitzvahs. Then you get all these blessings of rain and everything else, right? Yochol zekima mitzvahs. You might think that when the Torah says im bechukotai telechu, that's talking about keeping the 613 mitzvahs. Kishu umer et mitzvotai tishmu. But 1 minute, the Torah says right afterwards, and you will guard my mitzvotai, my mitzvahs. And again, every word in the Torah is gold, so he doesn't. It's not poetic. So what is he talking about? What are we talking about? Bechukotai telechu and mitzvotai tishmeru. So Rashi explains, this is based upon the Torah's Kahanim, which is a Medrashic source. Harikima mitzvahs amor. We already know this idea of kima. Ha mani mekayim et chukotai telecho. What does it mean that you are walking in the ordinances? Shehave yemelim b'Torah. That you should be deeply involved with learning Torah. So the simple understanding of this sentence, based on the Medrash that Rashi brings, is if you will be toiling in studying my Torah and you keep my mitzvahs, so then you get all these blessings. That's how Rashi is explaining this. Now, how do you define the term, like toiling in the mitzvahs? It actually says if you will be walking in my ordinances or my. So what does it mean that you're toiling? So, we're used to American society that we have entertaining all the time. You turn on whatever you turn on, and you have some, like very charming or funny or whatever person that's entertaining. And, you can put your feet up. And, you can have a cup, like a bottle of Coca-Cola and some cakes and everything. And you go to university, I was told sometimes at university you can watch them on the screen in your room. You don't have to go to classes. Did you ever hear?
Online university?
Yeah, online. No, even if you signed up in the university.
Yeah.
Even if you signed up.
At the college I went to, some of the classes are only online. Like the lectures are all pre-recorded.
Right. So you could be laying in bed.
They show a lecture from the room?
And you just lay there. And you watch it, and you might take some notes, and so you'll notice that, we don't do that. If you go into Beis Medrash, especially, in our Beis Medrash or other, like serious places, so the people are, like they're really, in Yiddish they say steiging, they're really like growing and what? So that means they're amel. That's what the term Rashi means, that they're really working in it. Because it's not just entertainment. It's like we're striving to find the truth. And Amol, the Torah, means a person is striving to find the truth in the Torah. So that's one of the keys of getting blessing. Not just to go to classes and hear an interesting lecture and some jokes and whatever and have some ideas that tickle our mind. But what we're trying to do is get to the bottom of things, trying to get to the understanding. And if you see a commentary in the Gemara or something, and you're working on it, and you're trying to get it, and you look at it now, you turn it away, and you look at it again, you're trying to figure it out, and you ask other people, and all of a sudden there's a whole people. There was in Europe, there was a sign in one of the famous yeshivas, no fist fighting in the Beis Medrash. Why? You understand it like this? Are you, cracked or something? It's like this. What, you asleep? They start arguing, and no fist fighting. Why? Because they're searching for truth. They're striving for truth. It's amo b'Torah. You're working for it. It's not just, oh, that's an interesting idea. Okay, you have your idea. I have my idea. Okay, bye. It doesn't work like that. It's real. It's really, we're dealing with something that's so important to us. So we want to be amal. Amal in Hebrew means like you're toiling in it. So that's actually what brings the blessing. Now, again, sometimes people are in a situation where they're living in a community and there's not much going on, and the rabbi gives a class and he tries to entertain people, and afterwards, people say, oh, that joke the rabbi told was great. What did he have to say about the parsha? I forgot. But the joke was great, I mean, that's, okay, so it's still plugged in. They'll get some credit, but the amal of Torah isn't there necessarily. Every person to his level. So that's how Rashi understands in Bechukotai telechu, that if you'll be amal, you'll be working, toiling to find the truth, striving for truth, and you perform the mitzvahs, and you do them. You see, you guard the mitzvahs and you'll do them. There's two aspects of this. Shomer, the fellow that's sitting outside, he's called a shomer. Shomer is a guard. So you have to guard the mitzvahs and do them. So what kind of mitzvahs do we guard? Mostly negative things. You're guarding yourself not to do things. And this, and v'asitem otam, and to do them is more the positive things. To do things. You need both. Yeah.
Can you guard a positive mitzvah?
How would you do that? And normally, like to do something is a positive thing. Is you're functioning, as opposed to guarding yourself from eating something that's not kosher, or guarding yourself from not desecrating Shabbos. Okay. Now, there's two aspects of this. The ultimate that the Rambam speaks about as a level of service to God is to do it ba'ahava, to do it with love. Not through fear, but through love. But there also has to be this edge of fear. You have to have both things. The term in Hebrew is ahava, is love, and yira means fear. So somebody is inspired and he says, God is so wonderful and everything, I'm going to, do all these wonderful things. All of these wonderful mitzvahs. But there has to be another edge that you realize, which is called yira, that if you don't comply with it, so you're going to get in trouble. You have this company. Let's say you have a company, and all of the people who are working in the company, they say, I love the boss, and the company is so great, and we're growing so nicely. So that's very good. Who wants to have a company, or who wants to work for a company that you're always worried the boss is going to see you and he's going to scream at you? These have like workshops and places like sweatshops and everything. People are working, and when the boss walked by, okay, wow, I can take a rest. But I mean, that's not the healthy thing. Nowadays, companies, they're trying to have, like a group effort. They even give you like percentiles as a perk, in order to feel that it's yours. But that same company that's working on, let's say, ahava, of loving the company, they also have an edge that they realize that if you're not functioning up to par, so you're going to get fired. That's if you don't have that edge on you. So you can't always work out of love. We have this with personal relationships also. You have somebody, a wife or a good friend, and you're always doing. But you always have an edge. Well, if I don't do it for him, or if I do something that's negative, so then the person's not going to talk to me, or you're going to ruin your family. So you make a decision at certain times that even though that, I feel like doing it, but I have a fear because it's the wrong thing to do at this moment. So that's the idea of tishmeru, that you should guard the mitzvahs and do them. So here we have a blessing. Now, in Israel, we really can relate to this very well, because the pasuk says, "V'nasati geshmechem be'itam." I'm going to give you the rains in its proper time. You know that if it rains out in another month from now, it's looked upon as a curse in Israel, because we have a certain cycle in Israel, and it's not expected to rain in another month from now, or in the middle of the summer. It would be like terrible, because the crops are growing, and the crops that are growing shouldn't have rain at this point. And in the winter, if you don't have enough rains, so then you have a drought, and everybody is saying prayers in order to get the rain. Yeah. Basically, in Israel, you can normally say, Shavuos is next weekend. You know that? Everybody know that? Yep. We have a holiday next week of receiving the Torah. So normally, after Shavuos until around Sukkot, which is a big chunk of time, there's no rain here. It's not like the States where, it's sunny out, you go to the beach, and all of a sudden it's pouring rain out. You can plan to have a wedding outside in June, and you can assume that it's going to be, around, like 75 degrees or 80 degrees, depending what part of Israel you are. It just doesn't rain. It just doesn't happen. Wow. So the idea of having Gesham B'itam, now there's another aspect also, that it should be the right type of rain. You see, we say in the Shema, have a mitzvah actually to recite the Shema twice a day. So it also quotes this idea. It's the second paragraph, and we say in the Shema, if you will certainly adhere to my mitzvahs and do that which I told you today, to love God and to serve Him with all of your heart and with all of your soul. Same idea. V'nasati mata ba'arsachem be'ito. I'm going to give the rains in its proper time. Yora o malkush. Now there's two types of rains, and you'll see this in the Middle East here. There's two types of rains. There's the rain at the beginning of the year, and then there's a rain which is called malkush, which is later. It's the proper type of rain. So not only do we have a blessing that we'll have rain in the proper time, but we'll also have the right type of rain, a light rain, a heavy rain, in order to promote the growth. So that's what the Torah is telling us in the second sentence. And I will make it that you'll have the rains in its time. And v'natati aretz yivula, and you'll have your produce in the land. The eitz asada, and the trees in the right. Yitain piro, they'll have their fruits. Now, again, let's go back to Rashi. So, I mentioned just the idea that rain will happen in the proper time, the right seasons and everything. But there's another level to this also that Rashi brings down. And again, he's bringing it from the Medrash of the Torah's Kahanim. What does it mean that it will be raining out in the proper time? So Rashi says, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down on the column. Be'itam b'shah she'ein b'nei adam letzeitz, at a time when people are not going out. So not only the right season of times, the right month of time, but even in the right times, but a convenient time of the day, it will rain. And when is that? B'leil Shabbatot, Friday nights. Friday nights, you come back from shul, right? So, people, are home. Okay, so let it rain then, who cares? It's convenient,
Except for people who are visiting other people's houses.
Right, okay, but let's say, at night, late, hopefully, and that's a convenient time. It's a convenient time that it should be raining out. Basically, when we're praying for the rain, I mentioned it's all based in Israel here, that from Sukkot we start praying for rain. And on Passover, we stopped praying for rain. The fact that it rains, a little drizzle here, but it's not the real time. So it's not just the time as far as a month goes, but God is giving us a blessing that when it's the right time to rain, He'll give it in a convenient time that's going to rain out. So, we'll have the best life. And this is a concept that you probably heard with Rabbi Ullman talking about more spiritual aspects about things. The idea that there's a connection, let's say, between the spiritual and the physical things that we do. And this is actually, again, what we say in the Shema, that when you do the right thing, so that activates a spiritual force that brings blessing into the world. It's a very unique idea. That the fact that there's a physical reaction based upon a spiritual level. When you're studying Genesis, so you see that some people live over 1,000 years. So you go, well, they didn't know what years were in those days. No, we don't say that. Yes, it did days and days and years and years. So what happened? Did you ever think about that? So there's a famous commentary in the Ramban in Genesis. The Ramban was one of the major commentaries on the Chumash. So, how do we understand it? Because I don't know anybody that's, if you make it over 100, you're doing, amazing, right? But, you had people that lived 1,000 over. So how do we deal with it? So the Ramban explains in the same idea that when God created the world, it was the perfect world. Everything was balanced. It was the most healthy place to live. There was no diseases. Originally, there was not supposed to be death. And just, the perfect, let's say, what were we going to say? Heaven in this earth, right. So what happens? So the Ramban explains, well, there were people that made mistakes. And they brought sin into the world. And over the years, it got to a point even then there was idol worship that came into the world. So each stage, the Shekhinah, the divine presence, departed from us. And when that happens, so then there's less physical blessing in the world. And therefore, what you eat and your living conditions don't have the power, the poignancy to keep us alive for those years. So that's how the Ramban explains it. When we got the Torah, so we're in a very high level. This is Shavuos, we received the Torah next week. So we were on a very high level. We were at the level of go when the world was created, and this is before Adam sinned. However, you understand how Adam sinned, that's a whole idea itself. But we were at go. No death, perfect world. What happened?
Golden calf.
Right. So they brought sin into the world, denying God. That's basically idol worship. And then we fell, and we're trying to get back to go. We're trying to get back to stage one and start developing the world as God wanted it, as original. So it's all based upon our input and the results of our input making blessing in the world. See, I'll just share an idea that the secular political parties are always after the religious parties, are saying, you don't care about Israel. Saying, you're only worried about Shabbos, you're only worried about kosher, why don't you care about Israel? You know what I mean? Why don't you deal with, problems we have? So what do we say back to them? Well, if you don't have Shabbos, you don't have kashrus, you don't live a Jewish life, so what are we doing here? We have a right to be here. We learned a few weeks ago in the Parsha that God told us that if you will do the acts that the Canaanites are doing, so the land is going to lahaki. Anybody know what lahaki means in Hebrew? Lahaki means to vomit. It says in the Torah that the land is going to vomit you out. Just like I vomited out the Canaanites who did idol worship and really lowly lifestyles. So I'm bringing you into Israel to live a higher life. But if you end up to be like them, so who needs you? So the land will just vomit you out. Because it's a holy, if a person is used to, high quality of food and he eats something that's off a little bit, he has problems, So this is the holiness of Israel. The holiness of Israel is, the holiest place on the map of the whole world. And if we do the wrong things here, so God forbid, So we're actually the Zionists. We're the biggest Zionists. Bring out the flags, because the Torah tells us that if you keep the mitzvahs, like we're seeing here, the chukim, Bechukotai tolechu, and the mitzvahs you guard, and you do them, so I'm going to give you everything great. And nobody in Israel, I can't say nobody, but and nobody normal will say that we are living in Israel because, we're such smart people and we have such a great army. And we're just, it's on our own. Because all of the wars were miracles here. Everybody admitted it. I'm not saying just because, I'm coming from the religious camp. The people that were secular, that went through the wars, they just said, how did this happen?
It's almost got to be considered a miracle too that one of the smallest countries has one of the most powerful militaries.
Right.
How does that come about as well?
Right. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have the best army, but when you're surrounded by millions, the whole world, is against us, and somehow we're existing, right? So there's a correlation to the people that are learning Torah, they're keeping mitzvahs, they're guarding the Torah. So this is our key, our deed to Israel. That's how we look at it.
Do they chalk up, how there's so many Jews with Nobel Peace Prizes? Do they chalk, do people kind of look at that as a miracle, or do they just look at it as, if you look at it in common sense, if a kid's learning Gemara from the age of 6, of course people are going to be a little smarter.
Right. Well, in order to keep the mitzvahs, a person has to develop himself. He can't just turn on the tube and watch television and just, make his mind mushy. That's not a Jewish thing. I'll just add, just for a moment, this one point, that there was a student at Or Sameach who was in the military. Maybe you heard this story? There was a student who was in the military, and he came to yeshiva, and he was going to, a course in officer school, to learn how to do battle. So they went all the way back, how the ancient worlds did battle and how they succeeded and everything. They went through all the generations up till now. And they didn't mention anything about the Jewish people. And we had battles, and we, sometimes we won, sometimes we lost, but, and the Israelis, the modern Israelis, they talked about modern, tactics in war, so they didn't mention it. And look at the wars that we won, since 48. So this Jewish guy, he wasn't too observant at that point. So he went to the teacher, who was one of the officers, and he said, why didn't you mention, the Israeli army? You come to my office tomorrow at 12 o'clock. The guy goes, oh no, anti-Semite. He's going to put me in jail, chutzpah, I talk to him like this. So he comes the next day, It's in military school in America.
Oh, in America.
Yeah, military school in America. Okay. So he said, I wanted to answer your question. So the guy goes, oh no, what's going to be? He says, my course is how to wage war, not how to do miracles. He says, that makes no sense how the Israelis won. It's a famous story. The guy, I think he was a student here in North Sameach. But that's basically it, So when we have the wars, we say, miracles, miracles, miracles. Afterwards, people are used to it, and, they forget about it, and they go back to their own little, lifestyle, whatever. But, if you see people praising, after the war, they're all saying, thank God, Baruch Hashem, we made it, Yeah. So this is the idea that there's a correlation, a direct a direct effect that when we do the mitzvahs, so then we bring bracha into the world. And everything is going to go. And here it just goes a little bit further. We'll do another few sentences. So we're on the third line here, the third word. V'hesig lechem dayesh et abatzia ubatza yasig et azera. V'chaltem lachem lechem lesova v'yeshavtem levetach ba'artzachem. So there's a few points here. So, when we spoke about the idea that there will be rains and the produce of the trees, so we'll have such an abundance that the produce that we had from last year will not be finished by the time we have the next year's. And we have so much produce, we don't know what to do with it, And another point is v'chaltem lachnechem lesova. You're going to be eating your bread to be sovea. Sovea means you're satisfied. Now that's another point also. The fact that we'll have blessing, that what you have will satisfy you. There's a lot of people that have a lot of money, and they're worrying about what are they going to eat tomorrow, what restaurant they're going to go, and they're never satisfied by anything. They always find, I went to this restaurant. It wasn't. The blessing is that what you eat, you'll be satisfied with, which is an important thing. And you'll be dwelling in Israel, in your land, levetach, in security, and in shalom. So Rashi again says that you'll be eating a little bit, and you'll be satisfied. So if a person has a lot of physical things, he has his little toys that he plays with, is everything. But if he doesn't feel comfortable that he's not going to get, he's always worried about thieves. He's worried about, bombings and everything. So what is it worth anyhow? And that's what it says in the next pasuk. V'nasati shalom ba'aretz. I'm going to give you land, in your land, peace. I'm going to give you peace. V'shachavtem. And you're going to be able to go to sleep. Ve'ein machrid. You're not going to be fearful when you go to sleep that you're going to get attacked or whatever. V'hishavti chaya ra min haaretz. And I'll take away wild animals from your land. V'cherev lo ta'avor ba'arzachem. And there won't even be swords that go through your land. Forget about having wars, but other armies won't even pass through your land. So you'll be living in such a wonderful lifestyle that there won't be dangerous animals, and there won't even be armies that are going through your land to do wars with other people. Right, so I want to just do one more pasuk, and then we'll just explain it. If we have any mathematicians here, you can help me out here. V'radavtem es oivechem. You're going to chase after your enemies. V'naflu lifnechem lecherev. And they're going to fall from your sword. Now let's take out the math book here. The next pasuk. V'radfu michem chamisha meya. Now 5 of our Israeli soldiers is going to chase after 100. Okay. Okay. So let's keep this in mind. 5 is going to run after 100, and meya michem ravava yirdafu. So 5 will chase after 100 of your enemies, and 100 will chase after 10,000. Now, if you take out your math, does that work out?
It's 1 in 20 and 1 in 100.
Right. So what's going on here?
Synergy.
Huh?
Synergy.
Synergy?
Synergy. S-Y-N.
Is that English?
Yeah, it's the.
What does that mean?
What was the other word we used yesterday?
It's exponential
growth.
Yeah, it's exponential utilization, where the combined parts are worth more than the sum of the individual parts.
Okay.
Everyone makes each other better. In other words.
Right. But the more you have,
Quality over quantity.
It's like the.
Kind of like when you sell car by pieces, you get more when you.
Well, it's like you have one person that can do the synergies often used in like corporate America where it's like one person can get through like 100 pieces of paper per day, but then if you have like 5 people, they can get through 1,000 pieces per day, and it's it's like by working together they're able to accomplish more.
You have more of an energy.
Right.
So I'll tell you what Rashi says. This is the second column on the second the left-hand column, second line. Chamesh meya umeya rova. 5 will chase 100, and 100 will chase 10,000. V'hikach hacheshbon. So Rashi, I basically saw Rashi earlier, right? Is that the way you make a tally? It doesn't work out. Like you said, it's 1 out of...
It's 1 in 20 versus
1 in 20.
100.
Right. V'lo lo haya tzrich loma ella. It should say 100 will chase after 2,000. So how does in the Jewish world, how do we answer it? Ella she'enu doma muat osin at the mitzvah at the Torah. There's no comparison between a small amount of people doing the Torah, l'rivavin ha'osin es the Torah, as opposed to a multitude of people doing the Torah. It's not in a ratio. It's the more people that are doing mitzvahs and keeping the Torah. So that's bringing an amazing amount of reward and success to the Jewish people. Now we have this in general in Jewish law, Barov Am Hadras Melech, that the more people, Barov Am, the more of the Am are doing things, it's more of a glorification of the king. So they even discuss this idea that if you can hear the Megillah, let's say on Purim, so reading the Megillah is an important mitzvah that you're sort of like advertising the miracle. So if you have an opportunity to do it in a big shul where there's a lot, so it's much better. It's a greater mitzvah. And in general, if you can do things in a bigger group, that's always chalked up as a bigger mitzvah because there's a greater amount of holiness, and that's another concept here that it's not comparable. A small amount of people doing mitzvah together than a large group that's doing mitzvahs. Okay, we'll hold it here.